back. All right, next up is an interview with Stephen Bassett. Now, Stephen Bassett is the leading advocate for ending the 64-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He's the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group and the Political Action Committee XPPAC, and the executive producer of the X Conference. His work has been extensively covered by national and international media, and over the past 3 years he has spoken to audiences all over the world about the implications of formal disclosure. Now, yesterday, he and I had a really good interview. We were going to talk for half an hour, but he had so much information that we just kept going, and this was well over an hour, like an hour and 15 minutes. So what I've decided to do was to break this interview up into two parts. I'm going to play part of it today, and I'm going to play the other part tomorrow. The importance of this interview is that there is a petition that has been put out at WhiteHouse.gov about UFO disclosure. So I'm going to let Stephen tell you all about it, since he is the best man for that job. So here we go. This is part one. Enjoy. Last time we spoke was in December, I believe, and you were just, there was just the Disclose Petition 2. We were talking about that, and now you're here to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with it. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. This is a fairly important project underway, which most people don't know about. And more importantly, many of those who do know about it don't understand its importance. So let's clarify. Let's frame it for your audience. The White House started a petition process back on September the 22nd on their website. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an appropriate and noble attempt on their part to engage the people. It's called We the People. You go to WhiteHouse.gov, and it's quite easy to find. Since September the 22nd, about 20,000 petitions have been submitted to this section, somewhere between 10 and 20. It's hard to get a number on that. Of issues of all types. And of those many thousands, approximately 450 have actually been posted to the White House website. You need 150 signatures for that to happen. And of the 450 that have been posted, approximately 65 or so got the necessary signatures to generate a White House response. And the early part of this project on the White House website it was 5,000 signatures, and then it was raised to 25,000 signatures. You get that many signatures in 30 days, and you will get a formal response from the White House. So that's the project. That's what was set up, and a lot of people are participating, and all good. Now, the moment that PRG, my Paradigm Research Group, my organization, learned about this, we saw a very good opportunity to advance the disclosure process regarding the ET presence. And so, put together a plan, and one of the first petitions that were submitted was, in fact, Disclosure Petition 1. Now, Disclosure Petition 1 was formulated to put the issue, frame it, put it in perspective, go right to the heart of it. And it reads as follows. We, the undersigned, strongly urge the President of the United States to formally acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence, engaging the human race, and immediately release into the public domain all files from all agencies and military services relevant to this phenomenon. Extraterrestrial means non-human intelligence, almost certainly from another planetary system, of which we're finding more every day. But it could be elsewhere, perhaps from another dimension, from another time, whatever. In any case, it's still a major issue regardless. An extraterrestrial will serve the purpose.
Right.
So what was the point of that? Did we expect that if the petition got 5,000 signatures that the President was then going to, I guess I'll disclose? No, not at all. What happened, of course, was that the petition received 5,000 signatures in 4 days, ultimately 12,000 signatures, which triggered a response from the White House, which came on November the 4th. In addition, this petition, Disclosure Petition 1, achieved more media coverage worldwide than all of the other posted petitions at that time, a couple hundred combined. Hundreds of articles worldwide.
That's pretty impressive.
And so the response came on December 4th. And this response is notable for three reasons. Now, this is where your listeners need to pay close attention.
Okay.
First and foremost, this is the first time ever that the executive branch of the U.S. government has ever put a formal petition on this issue, which has been 6.5 decades now, worldwide, massive amount of evidence, books, articles have been written, witnesses come forward, and on and on and on. It's the first time the White House ever put it in writing.
Okay.
Now, that was intentional on their part. And it was the wise thing to do. You don't want to put your position down in writing on an issue you can't address. So, the position that the White House put out on November the 4th came from their Office of Science and Technology Policy. It's logical.
Okay.
Which is the science office for the president. It's run, directed by Dr. John Holden, physicist. Written by one of their staffers. I'm not suggesting at all that they did a lot of research or suddenly looked into this issue extensively. No, they were just told, what's our position? What's our position going to be on this? They put it out. Now, it's only about 9 paragraphs. It's very short. And it's a very hard line, which I'm not surprised at. And let me just read a little bit of it.
Okay.
And note the language. Note how they're embracing the language of the petition and of this issue as it's now being engaged. Okay. And that's good. Thank you for signing the petition asking the Obama administration to acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. Really, the petition was engaging with the human race. That's fine. The U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet. All right, notice it says the U.S. government has no evidence. It doesn't say there isn't any, but it has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet, or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public's eye. It goes on to say, well, but we do care, and that's why there's a SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and the Kepler telescope, and so forth. They then repeat that there's no evidence in the later paragraph, and that's it. And this response remains on the White House website now, along with the petition that generated it, and those who signed that petition, all 12,000. And anyone can go to WhiteHouse.gov, We the People, check the responses, and they can find it. Now, oh, by the way, any of your audiences listen to this that's on the web, and most of them probably are, then if they just bring up the home base for this project, this petition project by PRG, they can follow along. And that website is an easy one. It's disclosurepetition.info. Disclosurepetition.info. All right. Now, so as I said before, the first notable thing about this is that this is the first time we've gotten, in writing, a formal response from the executive branch. The second notable thing about this response, or the key elements of this response, meaning the paragraph that I just read, is that it's false, completely false. Those three statements: no evidence that anything is being hidden, and so forth. And then thirdly, it's not defensible. You can be false, but defensible. It's not defensible. Which is to say that if any member of the White House, whether they be science, political advisors, or anybody else, that were to go in front of a camera and attempt to defend that statement with any of the major researchers in this field or activists, it would be hopeless. I mean, they couldn't do it. And you can be sure they won't attempt that.
Right.
All right. So the Disclosure Petition 1 accomplished its fundamental goal, was to get this response.
Okay.
Fine. Now, where do we go from there? So where do we go from there? Simple. What we have now is a stationary target. A formal response in writing from the White House regarding the ET phenomena, of which a huge amount is known, and evidence has been accumulating for 65 years. They can't run from it. They can't hide. And they can't say they didn't say it. So we go after it. We go after that position, break that position, break the truth embargo. Okay. Truth embargo being the formal policy that the government instigated with the assistance of its allies, with the help and cooperation of its allies, back in the late 1940s, early 1950s, that this issue had to be contained and with acknowledgement had to be withheld for national security reasons. All right. So what DRG decided to do next is, in going after that position, was to use the petition process itself and thus submit Disclosure Petition 2. Now, I'll just briefly mention that petition was submitted initially December 1st, but the White House website, which was evolving, the We the People project on the White House website was evolving. They were dealing with millions of signatures, and they didn't have it all working like it ought to be. And as a result, the site just wasn't working very well in December. It was breaking down. People couldn't sign. All kinds of complaints. So
right,
essentially,
I remember that.
Yeah. So it was a false start, and it's unfortunate, but in a way, it was a blessing. Okay. So just forget that. It was like it was like a golf shot. This went off into the woods, so we took a mulligan. And this petition, the Disclosure Petition 2, has been resubmitted to the White House as of February the 23rd. Now, this petition is much more complicated than the first one, and it is attempting to do three things. One, show that the White House's position statement is wrong. Two, draw the political media into the issue at the highest level, really for the first time, and place the issue further, again, for another month or more, on the White House website. Now, people say, well, wait a minute, why is that important? It's real simple. All of this could be happening at, say, PRG's site. We have a petition thing there and putting the information up, and we'd have X amount of traffic. But that's not where this is taking place. This is taking place on the White House website. This is the website of the most powerful nation in the world. This is a site that's visited by people from all over the world. And, of course, it's also visited by any American citizens, including members of the Congress or staff, members of the military, members of the intelligence community. It's right there. And so it's playing out before the world, which is, and of course, gives it a gravitas, which it needs. So those three things are what is being accomplished by the second petition. Now, let's look into this petition. Why is it so important, and why is it so powerful in context with the first petition, Disclosure Petition, and the White House response? Let me read it to you. It's not long. In this project, which has protocols, you're only allowed 120 characters now for the title, and then 800 characters of information. So it has to be very compact. So let's go with this. We petition the Obama administration to immediately investigate UFO ET disclosure efforts during the Clinton administration, the Rockefeller Initiative. Disclosure Petition 2, the Rockefeller Initiative. The Obama administration has formally stated the U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet, or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. If true, what was the Clintons, obviously referring to President Clinton's, Office of Science and Technology Policy, investigating from March 1993 to October 1996 in concert with billionaire Clinton friend Lawrence Rockefeller? And now the key paragraph. This is the paragraph, this is the words that might launch the media and end this truth embargo finally after 6.5 decades. Those who knew and have not spoken publicly of this initiative include President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Obama Transition Chairman John Podesta, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, Vice President Al Gore, and Governor Bill Richardson. And then finally, confirming documents. And there are 2 web links to websites that have the documents that confirm the Rockefeller Initiative and everything this petition is asserting, that anyone in the world could then cut and paste and go and see for themselves.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
What are those websites?
There are 2 websites involved here. And to explain those, I need to give a little more background.
Okay.
What is the Rockefeller Initiative? Why is it so important? Lawrence Rockefeller is one of the sons of John D. He's dead now. He's been dead about 6-7 years. And but he wasn't like his other brothers. He took a different path. He was less concerned about making huge sums of money, more concerned about the environment, about exploring a range of issues, and being a philanthropist. He'd supported the work of John Mack at Harvard. He supported at Cambridge. He supported the work of Colin Andrews and others, looking into the UFO issue. He was clearly aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a billionaire. So when the Cold War ended, and was really over by the end of 1991, the door for the first time to resolve the ET issue with disclosure, or at least begin the resolution with formal acknowledgement disclosures, we call it, really opened for the first time. And it was not long after that on March the 29th of 1993, approximately 40 days after Clinton was inaugurated, Lawrence Rockefeller approached the administration with an intention to meet with the president, send a letter to the president, and initiate a report that would prompt the administration to start releasing all of the UFO files in its possession, all files related to UFOs and the phenomenon, which is extraterrestrial in many cases, and initiate new investigations, get things out and going again to get the public the truth about this, because the government had shut down, quote unquote, in the public sector, investigations into this phenomenon in '69 after they closed Blue Book. Now, if the administration had done this, it would have effectively ended the truth embargo during the first term in the Clinton administration. This initiative, this effort, went on for 3 years. It involved a number of researchers who actually met at the Rockefeller Ranch in Wyoming to plan strategy. There were presentations made, reports were delivered, a study was conducted, a book was generated called UFOs: The Best Evidence, and some of the most powerful people in the world knew about it. Okay, fine. So what's remarkable about that? What's remarkable is that none of the people on the government side that knew about this initiative or involved in it have ever said a word publicly about it since it started 19 years ago. And more interestingly, they've never been asked a single question by the American press, which is essentially a result of the truth embargo, about this initiative. That an article was written about it, that it was going on, so it was known to some news people, and there was an article back in the early 90s in the New York Daily News. Other than that, they stayed away from it. Kind of like the press stayed away from Jack Kennedy's affairs. It was like you just don't report Jack Kennedy's personal sexual life, which one can make a case, that's appropriate. In this case, you just don't report or deal with the extraterrestrial phenomena issue at the high political level, though there are many, many articles being written about the phenomena and other things going on around the world by mainstream press, but you just don't engage at the political level because that would challenge the truth embargo, and that's not permitted. It's sort of an understanding now.
Right.
Well, what can I say? That's not the way the news is supposed to news people are supposed to operate. That's not the way the fourth estate is supposed to work. So here we have it, a situation now where This initiative has gone on. It lasts for 3 years. The administration during that time came under broad-based attack from every sector you could imagine. Scandal upon scandal upon scandal, quote unquote, to try to destroy the president and end his presidency in one term. One of the great backstories of the Clinton era that has not been reported is the connection between the attacks on Clinton and this initiative that was taking place in his Office of Science and Technology Policy. Because it was clear early on that the military intelligence complex had absolutely no desire for Bill Clinton to be the disclosure president and engage this issue. He was not acceptable to them on many levels. And one has to wonder if they played any role in the attacks on the administration, which never stopped. And in any event, the initiative by Rockefeller ran its course by fall of 1996. The administration did some things. I mean, it did attempt to react to it in a number of ways. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Rockefeller was getting quite old, and I think his mental faculties were starting to diminish, perhaps early dementia. And it just, I guess he'd done what he could. And he did not pursue it further after late 96 and faded away. But it was known to a number of people because many of the principals in the public sector are, of course, still alive today. A few have passed. And so it was that in 2000, Canadian researcher Grant Cameron, as part of the development of a website which is called presidentialufo.com, where he has compiled, was and is still compiling, the largest compilation of information regarding the intersection between U.S. presidents and UFO ET phenomenon, submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which I think was still during the Clinton administration, pretty sure, regarding everything UFO ET and Lawrence Rockefeller connected. And for whatever reason, and I'm surprised that this happened, but maybe I wouldn't be surprised if I knew all the specifics. He received back 1,000 pages of documents. In other words, they unloaded a lot of what they had. Did they give everything? Well, we may never know. But they gave him 1,000 pages of documents, which confirmed the Rockefeller Initiative quite effectively. Though I don't think it's everything that is out there that could eventually be compiled. So it's the year 2000, and Grant Cameron has the confirmation of the Rockefeller Initiative in his hands. He provided a set of these to me. I made a couple of copies, and I provided them to some newspapers, including the Washington Post. And they had no interest in it. No news here. All right, fine. So what happened next was that Grant Cameron, working from these documents, put up substantial narratives in his Clinton section at presidentialufo.com, in which he laid it all out. All well and good. I did something different. At paradigmresearchgroup.org, I created a Rockefeller Initiative section, which was designed more to give the press a very rapid, quick introduction to the key issue so they can engage it. And that section includes, and still does include, 173 of what I consider the most important documents in that 1,000 pages. And with thumbnails listed chronologically, then you go read the documents from the thumbs and what have you, and you can just follow the whole thing. And over the last 9 years, in numerous press releases that have been sent out from time to time, as well as open letters to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, what have you, this links to these resources at presidentialufo.com and at paradigmresearchgroup.org were made available to the press, and they still didn't cover it. No news there. All right. Now, what is the news that they're not covering? Well, the news is that a billionaire, Rockefeller, obviously a worldwide known member of the Rockefeller family, tried to get Bill Clinton to be the disclosure president in the early part of his term. And the people that knew about this or actually directly was involved in it, engaged in it, or knew about it, were then President Bill Clinton, his wife Hillary Clinton, who went on to run for president and almost became president, but is now the Secretary of State, considered the second most powerful office in the government of the Obama administration. The key advisor to Clinton, later his chief of staff, who went on to become the chairman of Obama's transition team after the election, which helped select the Obama administration, the Obama staff and what have you, John Podesta. Secretary of Clinton's chief of staff during the Rockefeller Initiative, who's now the Secretary of Defense and was just recently also the director of the CIA, Leon Panetta. The vice president at the time, Al Gore, who's gone on to win a Nobel Prize and is touring the world, trying to convince governments to change their policy regarding major issues. That would be Al Gore, who also ran for president and almost won. And then Congressman, during the Rockefeller Initiative, Bill Richardson, who then went on to become Clinton's Secretary of Energy, was tapped to be Obama's Secretary of Commerce, and was governor of New Mexico, who also ran for president, Bill Richardson. All of these people have never spoken publicly about that initiative or been asked a single question, and these people three of them ran for president, one of them ran and won, the others are holding major positions. And that's not news. Now, let me put that in perspective. In the same time period, well, actually, early in the Clinton administration, just as the Rockefeller Initiative is getting underway, this is back in 1993.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton had a friend, Jean Houston, which is kind of famous for being one of those sort of psychic predictors. And she invited Jean to the White House a couple of times. Probably not a good idea, but she has her friends. She has the right to have lunch with whoever she wants. And what apparently she and Jean were doing was they were doing a little role-playing where Jean, I guess, would play the role of Eleanor Roosevelt, and she would talk with her and kind of talk about what was Eleanor's life like as First Lady and how might Hillary conduct a little role-playing kind of thing. No big deal. But the press got wind of it. Big story. Big story. Worldwide. Went around for weeks and weeks and weeks. Hillary Clinton is channeling Eleanor Roosevelt. That's big news. But a 3-year effort by a billionaire Rockefeller to get the UFO files and get the government back in the investigation of this phenomenon is not news. That is all anyone ever needs to know about the reality of a truth embargo containing this issue, and the press's either willing or implicit or explicit involvement in that. You know, whether they're given memos every day, you don't cover this, or whether they just understand you don't go there, doesn't matter. That's a truth embargo. So that now is the framing for this.
Okay.
And why this is important. Because, and now we get to the punchline, if this petition receives 25,000 signatures by March the 23rd, the White House is going to have to respond to this. And I think you can see the irony here. It was the Office of Science and Technology Policy that Lawrence Rockefeller engaged. And this was under Clinton. It's the Office of Science and Technology Policy under Obama that just issued a statement, well, on behalf of the Obama administration, that there's no evidence whatsoever of any, or ever has been, of any life outside the planet, or of any non-human intelligence engaging human beings, or that the government has, quote, is hiding anything. Right. So the press is paying attention. As I mentioned, the disclosure petition 1 got more media coverage than all the other posted petitions combined. As this petition starts to approach 25,000 and they realize that there's going to be a response from the White House, this is news, and I don't think they'll stay out of it. And as it gets close, they're going to look at those links. They're going to go and check those documents out. And when they do, they're going to realize this is not just news. This is corroborated news. And they could very well start asking questions of some of these very, very powerful people that believe they can run the government and tell us what to do, but they don't have to tell us what's going on. They can withhold key information because they have because they can, and because we don't have really a right to know this. We don't have a need to know it. And we couldn't handle the information if they told us anyway. This is the reason why the trust in government in the United States right now is it is at the lowest levels in the history of the Republic, with the Congress currently running around 11%. And why things are breaking down. Because when there's no trust in government, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So now we're getting into some deep, important issues. We're starting to see the larger scope of this. And so that is why this project was created, and we are taking full advantage of this We the People initiative. But in order for it to truly achieve what it's attempting to achieve, we need people to sign the petition. And who would do that? Well, there have been many polls taken of the American people's thinking on this going back many years, but certainly in the last 10 to 15 years, by professional polling operations such as Reuters and Roper and CNN and Time and Ipsos. And we have a pretty good idea where the public is. I mean, they're private views because obviously these polls are anonymous. You know, what people might say to their colleagues at work is one thing, what they believe privately is another. And what we know is about 50% of American adults believe that this phenomena we're seeing has actually got extraterrestrial backing to it. That's approximately 150 million Americans. And 80% plus American adults believe that the government is not telling the truth. That would be about 240 million. And these numbers hold up for most of the industrialized world, and by and large are not too far off with respect to the less industrialized world. So we're talking about a couple of billion people around the world that either believe this phenomenon is real or that and their governments are not telling the truth.
Right.
That's who should sign this petition if they're tired of being lied to and they would like to know once and for all whether they're alone in the universe or not. And okay, fine. So, but in order to do that, they have to know that it exists. They have to know this project is underway at We the People. They even have to know that We the People exist. And of course, not that many do because the White House didn't promote it very heavily. They didn't want to, and they were very concerned. And I understand why. Because had they done so, they would have been buried. As it was, they were buried. They were overwhelmed by the number of people signing and the number of petitions. So they low-keyed it out the door, and it's slowly growing in awareness. I understand that. And the job of the petitioners is to do what they can to get this information out and let people know about it. And that's what I'm on the show, and I have 20 more shows this month. I've done 25 in the last 4 weeks. A global press release was sent out through Official Wire on the 23rd. Another one's going to go out tomorrow. Official Wire submits press releases to about 200,000 global media venues. So we're doing what we can. So now the question is, how do you sign this petition? It's real simple. You either go to the WhiteHouse.gov website, go to We the People, and find it, or you go to disclosurepetition.info, where the direct link to it is there. You go right to the petition directly. Or that link will be up in a lot of places. It's on YouTube videos that are going up now. There's about 20 or so out there already. But whatever, you get to the petition on the White House website. Once you get there and you click on the petition, it's going to ask you if you have an account already, log in with your password. If you don't, you got to create an account with We the People, just like you create an account with dozens of other things on the web. So you click Create Account, and you have to enter your first and last name and your email address. Then you have an option to put in your city and state, city and country, which is fine. They will, by the way, publish your first name and last initial only on the signature. You get an email back. This is standard operating procedure. The email has a verification link. You got to click on that, and it's got a password. Use the password. You log back in, sign all the petitions you want. And there's a profile. You can get the profile down at the bottom, and you can go in your profile, and you can change the password into something easy to remember, like the name of your cat or something. That's it. and you sign a petition. If you've already got an account, you can log in and sign a petition in a few seconds. Does it cost anything? No. So, all that information, how to sign it and all that, is up at disclosurepetition.info. But there's two other things we want people to do. In addition to signing this thing, we want them to share the direct link to the petition with as many as they can using their social media like Facebook and MySpace and Twitter, and their websites if they have them, their blogs if they have them, email lists. At disclosurepetition.info there are banners that you can grab to use for a link so that they sign, but they get 10 other people to sign. And then thirdly, if they want to, this is not critical, but if they got a few extra minutes, click on the feedback link at We the People and send a respectful message to the White House that they signed, that they think this issue is very important, and they expect an appropriate and comprehensive response by the administration to the Rockefeller Initiative petition, disclosure petition 2. Did all three things like that. That's all they can do, and that would be wonderful. And we would almost certainly get the 25,000 signatures. Right now, the petition is 4 days and 18 hours old, and the number of signatures is 3615, which isn't too bad. So
good.
That's how you sign it. There's still not. I think there may be some people in the audience who are still not quite getting the importance of this. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to do now is I want to give you a little taste of what these documents are saying, what's going on. And if you'll indulge me a little bit, it's not going to be, I think, too boring.
Okay.
I've gone now to ParadigmResearchGroup.org. I have gone to the Rockefeller Initiative section there, where you see photos of the principals. The key principals on the government side were Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, John Gibbons, the OSTP director, advisor John Podesta, and Associate Attorney General Webster Hubbell. Those who were watching this, I call them the watchers, who are aware of it fully, perhaps not directly engaged, were Albert Gore, Leon Panetta, and Bill Richardson. There were some secondary principals who were mentioned and somewhat engaged on this. That includes Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, former Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, Senator Claiborne Pell, Senator Patty Murray, Marie Galbraith, a known personage in Washington, Secretary of Air Force Sheila Widnall, and Congressional Representative Stephen Schiff. The researchers that were involved included Don Berliner, Antonio Huneeus, Richard Hall, Robert Teets, Dr. John Mack, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Stephen Greer, Dr. Bruce McAbee, Linda Moulton Howe, Dr. Jacques Vallée, Colin Andrews, Carl Flock. And then other principals on the public side, actually the key principals on the public side included Lawrence Rockefeller, Henry Diamond, his attorney, former Army Intelligence Dr. C.B. Scott Jones, who was heading the Human Potential Foundation at the time that was funded by Lawrence Rockefeller, and journalist Richard Farley, who was C.B. Scott Jones's right-hand man. Okay, all well and good. And by the way, later on, not too many years ago, when the Clinton Library, when the Clintons' documents that were couched under the Presidential Records Act became available right away, Grant Cameron was in there with multiple requests and has gotten additional documents, including photos from the Clinton Library showing Hillary Clinton at Rockefeller's ranch in that 1995 visit, and as well as confirmation that helped to assure that she was in fact talking with Rockefeller about the initiative. We have other photos with Bill Clinton there, so we know they were there, and we're virtually certain that they talked about the initiative. This is in '95. But I'm going to go on down. I'm going to hit the thumbnail. This is the document that launched this initiative, and this will one day be an historical document of significance. and let me read it to you.
Okay.
All of these documents had the FOIA cover, right? And then under the cover would then be the document itself. And this is the memorandum that launched the initiative on March the 29th. It was to Dr. John Gibbons, Ph.D. It was from Lawrence's attorney, Henry Diamond. And it was regarding a request for a meeting with Dr. Gibbons for Lawrence S. Rockefeller to take place on or about April 12th or April 13th. Now, when you listen to this, and most of the stuff I'm gonna present to your listeners is how appropriate the tone was. It wasn't overdone. It was couched in a very professional way because this was a very professional and appropriate approach. It wasn't hyperbolic, right? And that's good. That's what you would expect. Right. Lawrence, and again, this is the memo to Gibbons from attorney Henry Diamond. Lawrence S. Rockefeller, who was a leading U.S. conservationist, businessman, and philanthropist, is anxious to have a brief meeting with Dr. Gibbons to discuss the potential availability of government information about unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. Notice those three words. As one who has had a long-time interest in environmental and spiritual issues, which is true, Mr. Rockefeller, with other leading citizens, note that, is planning to make an approach to President Clinton on this subject. Prior to such an approach, Mr. Rockefeller would appreciate the opportunity of discussing the issue with Dr. Gibbons in order to make his communication to the President as useful as possible. The basic message to the President is that there is a belief in many quarters that the government has long held classified information regarding UFOs, which has not been released, and that the failure to do so has brought about unnecessary suspicion and distrust. Note those words. Many believe that the release of such information, if it exists, right, again, they're being reasonable, on a basis consistent with national security considerations, would be a significant gesture, which would increase confidence in government. The meeting should take no more than 45 minutes to an hour. Mr. Rockefeller will be accompanied by Scott Jones, president of the Human Potential Foundation, and Henry Diamond, a Washington attorney and longtime associate of Mr. Rockefeller, known to Gibbons. And thus began the Rockefeller Initiative. Now, let me just go to two documents that, in the light of the political realities of the last 10 years, should drive home the point that there is news here to any editor or reporter who is not suffering from a debilitating mental disease.
Right.
The first one is written late in 1995, and this is after the Clintons had met with Rockefeller at his ranch in Wyoming. It was accompanied by a draft of the letter to that Rockefeller wanted to send to Clinton. We believe this letter was sent, but that would have been in the Clinton records, and they're still trying to get that. This letter was written on November the 1st, 1995. It was from Henry Diamond, Rockefeller's attorney, and it was to Jack Gibbons, the head of the OSTP. By the way, before I read it, let me mention something else.
Okay.
Dr. John Gibbons, I'm quite sure, would rather have pulled his toenails out with a pair of pliers than have to deal with this when it showed up in his door, March 29th of 1993. Perhaps he contacted the White House and said, oh, what's going on here, and please, we got to stop this. Mr. President, or going through Leon Panetta on this, said, Leon, tell the President he's got to call Rockefeller and tell him I can't do this. They can't do it. Maybe he did that, maybe not. But Lawrence played a card that was brilliantly done. What Lawrence did was, at some point in this approach early on, he let it be known to Gibbons or others in the White House that as part of his efforts to advance this issue, he was seriously considering placing a full-page ad in every newspaper in the United States calling for the release of UFO files in government hands and the reinvestigation of the issue, get things going again, because this thing obviously was not going away and it was very important. I estimated that at the time, in dollars of that time, late early 90s, it would have cost Rockefeller about $30 million to do that, meaning virtually America wakes up one morning and there's a full-page ad in virtually every paper in the country. And that would not have been a problem for him. That would have been the return on his investments, maybe a couple of months' worth of return on his investments. And not surprisingly, what happened was he was told, well, now wait, let's don't rush into this, Lawrence. Let's don't get hasty. Let's talk. Come on in. Let's have a meeting. Let's see what we can do here. All right? Very smart. Very smart. Okay. All right. And he never did. He never did publish those or have such an advertisement placed in the newspapers. So that brings us to the letter of November 1, 1995. Dear Jack, it's not long. Attached are a draft letter to the president, which Lawrence has been discussing with Mrs. Clinton and her staff. And two, a draft report of the best evidence about UFOs. Lawrence thinks that it is perhaps timely to send a letter to the president. We think the best evidence report, although we haven't viewed it in detail or analyzed it, is a good piece of work. Lawrence would like to discuss these items by telephone, perhaps on Thursday, November 2nd, between 11:30 and 12:30, if this is convenient. Sincerely, Henry Diamond. Now let's go to another letter, which is even more intriguing. Okay. This is just about 2 months later, and this is now a letter from Lawrence Rockefeller himself to Jack Gibbons, OSTP Director and Science Advisor, dated February the 5th, 1996. And this is remarkable. It reads, one moment. Dear Jack, we appreciate your taking the time last week for our very productive telephone call. As always, your knowledge of the scientific and federal government scene is particularly useful to those of us trying to be helpful as citizens. As soon as the best evidence report, the report written by Don Berliner and coordinated by Marie Galbraith, who is the wife of an ambassador, which we have referred to as the Bootsy Report, Marie was referred to as Bootsy Galbraith, that was her nickname, is published, we will send you a copy. This report is an unusual combined effort of the three major UFO organizations. This was CUFOS, MUFON, and FUFOR, which came together in coalition at the time to assist in putting this information together for the OSTP. We believe that it is quite factual and avoids sensationalism. We, of course, would be very much interested in your reaction. As you suggested, we will ask those who worked on the report to put forward 2 or 3 names who might be candidates for a pilot project to assess the usefulness of the expanded amnesty program we have urged. Now, this is referring to the fact that Rockefeller was also pushing the administration to, through direct executive order, offer amnesty to anyone in the government willing to come forward to talk about the UFOT issue without fear of violating non-disclosure acts. This never happened and almost certainly will never happen until after disclosure. But that, again, gives you a sense of how far Rockefeller was asking the administration to go.
Right, that's pretty good.
Returning to the letter, we would hope that there could be a public-private review of this effort coordinated by your office. And now, a really amazing paragraph. Your willingness to approach the Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, and NASA on this project is extremely important. We will await the results of this effort in order to add any significant findings to our proposed letter to the President. We will, of course, take into account the comments you made on the draft. It well may be that it will be timely to put this before the President late this year in order that it might receive attention in a second term.
Wow.
You indicated that you will keep the First Lady's office informed, and we shall as well. Jack, we know you have a great many day-to-day and short-term urgent problems which demand your limited time, so we are particularly grateful for the very responsive attention you are paying to our initiative. Hillary Clinton was one of the most powerful first ladies in American history. She spent 8 years in the White House with an office in the executive branch. She was involved in most of what her husband was doing. She went on to run for President of the United States. And probably should have been the President of the United States, but fate stepped in, and it didn't happen. But she was as close to it as you can get. I don't think there's any question. Had she gotten the Democratic nomination, she would have beaten John McCain. And she would have been the leader of the most powerful nation in the world. She would have had access to a great deal of intelligence information, and she would, of course, have the ability to launch a nuclear war, because we still have thousands of nukes, and they can be targeted at any moment and sent off. And yet, it was not, in her view, important that we should know about the Rockefeller Initiative, the engagement of the UFO ET issue during her husband's administration, that was pointing to the fact that we're not alone in the universe and this phenomenon is real. That is unacceptable, period. If anybody wants to argue that, they are welcome to do so. But I think they will find they have a very small audience in support. And so that is the news. That is what's sitting on the White House website right now. Now, let me go a little further here, because this is again stuff that I don't believe your listeners, probably 1% of your listeners have heard this.
Okay.
And once again, we're reading a couple of pages of 1,000 pages submitted by Freedom of Information Act to Grant Cameron in the year 2000. By the way, let me also point out something else that your listeners may find interesting. The Office of Science and Technology Policy was only able to give those documents to Grant Cameron, because while the Office of Science and Technology, OSTP, was an executive office, it did not come under the Presidential Records Act, which is another law which has to do with the President's records, which you can't file an FOIA request on. They come under that act, and they are then sequestered until, under the current law, 12 years after the administration is out of office, and then they can be requested through the Presidential Library, which is what Cameron did in 2002 when that 12 years was up. The OSTP was exempted, and that's why he got those documents. One of the first things that George Bush did when he came into office was, one, to modify the Presidential Records Act to make it more difficult to get documents from the presidential libraries, including vice presidential documents. I've been referring to his father. And he also shoved the OSTP under the Presidential Records Act so it could not be accessed by the Freedom of Information Act. I just note this in passing. Interestingly enough, one of the first things that President Obama did when he took office was to pull the OSTP back out from under the Presidential Records Act. You see the game that's being played behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So, last thing I'm going to read you is the letter that Rockefeller was wishing to send to the president. It's a draft. We don't know for sure if it was sent, though it's almost on the point in a sense. He knew about it. Unless he could have seen the draft, anybody could provide it to him. But it's possible. But I think it was sent. I think he got it in one form or another, whether it's in the presidential library or not. But it's very revealing, and it's thoughtful, and it's intelligence. It's appropriate. I would have written a stronger letter, but that's okay. And this is what the American people are not seeing because the press simply don't feel there's any news here. The letter would have gone as follows. Dear President Clinton, regarding lifting secrecy on information about extraterrestrial intelligence. Mr. President, let me say why I believe the above subject is so important. There's some wonderful comments in this. Stuff that I have been talking about for many, many years, long before I ever read this, which is not surprising because, I think that this approach is the appropriate approach that many, thoughtful people would take. Mr. President, let me say why I believe the above subject is so important. For some time, I have been interested in the possibility of expanding man's spiritual and intellectual potential. We must fulfill more of our human potential if we are to cope with the increasingly difficult problems which now challenge our quality of life and our very survival. Keeping in mind, remember, this was written roughly in the time of about 1995.
Okay.
In my view, to achieve this greater potential, it is essential to accelerate the recognition of a new paradigm of consciousness which recognizes the oneness of mind, body, and spirit. This is, again, reflecting his spiritual bent, though he was more than capable of addressing hard realities and nuts and bolts. One possible evidence of a new paradigm of consciousness would be the discovery of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Of course, we must continue to deal primarily with problems on our own planet. However, I have come to believe that the question of whether there is life elsewhere in the cosmos is of great significance. The implications for science, religion, and human potential are enormous. If life does exist elsewhere, we may learn much that will help us here. Your initiative in bringing greater openness to government through the current review of the classification of government documents to eliminate unnecessary secrecy offers a very significant opportunity to advance our knowledge of this question. This letter is to request that as part of this reassessment, you personally and specifically direct a review of current government information policy concerning extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI, including unidentified flying objects, UFOs. It is widely believed that various agencies of the federal government have substantial information concerning the existence or non-existence of UFOs, and that such information may have been unnecessarily withheld from the public as classified for reasons of national security. If this information does exist, and if it were released, it would be received as evidence of a new spirit of partnership between government and its citizens. Note those words. The current classification review is a good step. However, Mr. President, from past experience, there is reason to believe that if there is information being held by federal agencies about ETI and UFOs, it will not be released in a meaningful way without your personal initiative. This is to urge you to expand and accelerate the important movement towards openness you have initiated. We suggest that you consider the following steps to be taken now. Direct, this would be by presidential directive, direct that information about ETI and UFOs be given priority in the current classification review. Appoint a coordinator for government information about ETI and UFOs to bring together information from all federal agencies involved, such as the Department of Defense, the Air Force, NASA, the CIA, and other parts of the intelligence community. Your science advisor, Jack Gibbons, might well be the right person for this role. Make it known through federal agencies, such as those named above, that credible witnesses having information about ETI or UFOs will be granted amnesty from relevant oaths or other government constraints. These steps, I respectfully suggest, would further not only the cause of scientific inquiry and knowledge, but also that of public confidence in government and international goodwill. The timing is particularly propitious because as our first post-Cold War president, you have an opportunity to take this important step without many of the national security constraints that have limited government candor with the American people in the past. As an interested and concerned citizen, I stand ready to assist in whatever I can do that you might find useful. Summarize. The Cold War was over. trust in government had been hit because of the machinations that had to be conducted to win that war, that truth in government was waning, that this might help to restore that trust and, of course, allow people to learn the truth about their role and their place in the universe. Such was the letter to Lawrence Rockefeller. And now, the second thing that people tend to raise, well, what evidence is there that Clinton in any way responded to this? Okay. Let me just give you a few examples.
Okay.
First and foremost, Bill Clinton, and we're getting back to the principles again, Bill Clinton, in one response to the Rockefeller Initiative, tasked his advisor, John Podesta, to come up with a way to redesign the declassification process and get more documents out to the American people, speed up the process, probably expand the parameters and what have you. And John Podesta did exactly that, and he has talked about it publicly. Let me make it clear that there was no reference to UFOs in this effort, which was known to the press and covered by the media. And John Podesta, the man who did that to the president, in 2002 and in 2003, stood at the dais in the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and called for the release of all UFO files. This was approximately 18 months after the president was out of office, in the hands of the government, because the people had a right to know, and it was the law. And you could easily find the key 26 seconds of that first presentation. And we need to get our hands on the entire statement by Podesta, both in 2002, 2003, and we will, by simply going to YouTube and doing a YouTube search on Podesta UFO. Webster Hubbell was a friend of Clinton from Arkansas, who he appointed as Associate Attorney General at Justice. Another thing Clinton did was to ask Hubbell, again, in response to the Rockefeller Initiative, ask Hubbell to check at Justice for information about UFOs and perhaps elsewhere. And Hubbell did. He contacted several agencies. We think he contacted the NORAD and possibly the NRO. And that was probably very naive. Clinton made a mistake there, and so did Hubbell. It wasn't that long afterward that Hubbell became one of the targets of the numerous attacks on the presidency, creating the various scandals, Travelgate, Pork Belly Gate, and Whitewater Gate, and so forth. And he came under attack. He was eventually indicted, convicted, and went to prison. But we know this happened because he wrote a memoir called Friends in High Places, where he talks about the president asking him to do that. So there are some examples right there. Bill Richardson, one of the what I call watchers, in 2004, about a little under 4 years after the president left office, wrote a foreword to a book called The Roswell Big Diaries, in which he called for the reinvestigation of the Roswell incident because he did not believe the Air Force's explanation was satisfactory. This from a Marine pilot. This is all connected to the Rockefeller Initiative ultimately. So there's just a test. But there's another one. There was another secondary principle. Remember Stephen Schiff? During the same period that the Rockefeller Initiative was taking place, it was when Stephen Schiff, a representative from the state of New Mexico, began, in response to numerous queries from his own constituency, began looking into the Roswell incident and trying to find documents and records within government agencies about the Roswell events. And he got the runaround. He was definitely being moved around and treated, well, badly. He didn't like it. He went public. He went on Larry King and a number of other shows and said, look, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to get records, and they're running me around, and I don't like it. Eventually, the Air Force, I think, under a little bit of pressure because of his public statements, did come forward and tell him that he had been looking for the phone records of phone calls in and out of Roswell, which had been extremely, obviously, revealing.
Right.
And he was told that they had been destroyed. Not that long after Stephen Schiff, former Army officer, went public with his dissatisfaction with the response of government to his request. he developed a rather odd and unusual squamous cancer on his outer ear, which they simply couldn't cure. And it moved quickly into his ear and into his brain, and he died while in office. And lastly, sometime just before or after the Rockefeller Initiative came to an end, President Clinton appeared at gave a speech in Ireland. And without being asked, without any prompting at all, happened to mention that he had been sent a letter by a young boy, wanting to know if extraterrestrials really crash landed at Roswell. And he said he didn't know, but he would sure like to know. And you can easily see that speech if you simply go and Google YouTube search Clinton UFO Ireland. So there you have it. This is the framing for the disclosure petition to the Rockefeller Initiative that is going to be up on the White House website until at least March the 23rd. If we do not have the 25,000 signatures, it will then be deleted. That'll be that. Though it will generate press, it will get some exposure. But if we do get the 25,000 signatures, it will remain up until the White House responds and gain more signatures, and that's a whole different ballgame. But all of that is in the hands of the American people, and how many are willing to go and sign that petition.
Absolutely, that's the important part.
So that's what I've got for that. Maybe you got some questions about it. Fire away.
No, you were very thorough of everything, and I think it's just amazing that they had this whole organization get together, the Rockefeller Initiative, and how they discussed it, and it never made any major press, as you're saying, and how
any
these
press.
people never any press, and now
major or minor.
And the fact that there's individuals out there that were part of that have never spoken about it, that's even more incredible.
Well, it shows that how much of a bind they're in, that they're trapped in the embargo.
Right.
In fact, the truth embargo has become a prison of its own making. As a result of how this has evolved, the presidency. See, President Carter tried to get access to information. He was told he couldn't have it. Clinton tried to get access. He was told he couldn't have it. And Kennedy tried to get access, and he was told he couldn't have it. They don't have a need to know. You're just the president of the United States. You come, you go. We're the holder of the secrets. We are the protectors of the country, which they are, by the way, and that's admirable. And I believe the people that run the military intelligence community are patriots, and they are doing what they think is best. But they are victims of this. Well, in a sense, the Cold War. The creation of the secret empire and this truth embargo instituted, they couldn't. And here's the dilemma. The president can't really come forward and announce the extraterrestrial presence, disclose, in other words, commit disclosure, without the evidence, without access to significant evidence that may be needed to support it. And the military intelligence community won't give it to him. The military intelligence community has the evidence, but they don't have the authorization to, quote, disclose this to the American people. The commander-in-chief is in charge of them. He is the boss. And so the two are trapped in this embargo. And until enough pressure is applied, most likely by the American media when they start doing their job again, then it will force them to probably have the necessary meetings, behind the scenes, back office meetings, to come to an understanding, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to go, and we can provide you this, and we're happy with that and whatever. And then it can happen. So that's kind of the dynamic there.
Okay, it's nice that we're living in a time where there is a lot more people standing up and speaking about things, and we do see it is making a difference. So if enough people get behind this, who are just tired of the lies, it could be a big deal, real big deal.
You're right, and it's not hard. They go to disclosurepetition.info and they find the direct link to the petition, or they go to WhiteHouse.gov and go to We the People and find the petition. But either way, they go to the petition, click on it. If they already have an account with We the People, they can sign it in a few seconds. If they don't, they need to create an account. They'll click on that and be sent and they'll be asked to put in their first and last name and their email address. they have the option of putting a city and state or city and country, because anybody in the world can sign this petition. It's not limited to Americans. Anyone in the world with a computer and an email address can sign this petition. And everybody in the world should be willing to do it or open to it, because this is a global issue. It impacts everyone. It's not just
right.
states.
Well, I've been popping back and forth to the website, and so far every time I go back, there's more signatures.
It's slowly accumulating, but we've got to pick up the pace. They'll get back an email with a password and a verification link. Click on the link, use the password, log in, sign the petition. It's that simple. It is a twitchy site. They still haven't got it perfect. It works poorly with Chrome browser, and Firefox works very well with the Internet Explorer.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to clear your cookies, but overall, and I've got information about this at disclosurepetition.info.
Okay.
And we have only, 24 more days, 25 more days to get those signatures, 25,000. Now, let me finish up with this, if I may.
Okay.
One of the things that has to happen, is starting to happen, but is still has a long way to go, is the American people have got to come out of a kind of trance that they've been put in by decades of massive propaganda that has been raining down on them, not only from the government, but also from marketing. In other words, commercial and government propaganda. It's not as bad as what the Soviets had to deal with, Lord knows, but it's still a lot. And you're kind of in a trance. And because of that, they're not aware of, one, how powerful the Internet is and how important it could be for their lives and the country. And how much opportunity they have to execute collective action, act collectively to get what they want, to change government, to reform government. But they will figure this out, but they need to do it sooner than later. And there has recently been a very powerful example of this, which I'll bring to their attention. Now, I'm not speaking to one side of the issue or the other. I'm talking about the process here. But a couple of weeks ago, two bills, which were very controversial, were about to be voted on in the House and Senate. They both dealt with how to deal with online piracy. One was called Stop Online Piracy Act, that's SOPA. The other was called Protect IP Act, PIPA.
Right. We did a lot about that on the show.
And there was some discussions about it on the Internet and so forth over months, but nothing major was happening, but it was out there. There was people sort of learning about it. Not surprising. As the votes approached, that's when action, or direct action, began. And that's fine, but sometimes if you wait too long, it's too late. But, of course, the Internet is incredibly fast. And in a matter of a couple of days, what took place was this. About 60 or so well-known sites, the best known and most trafficked being Wikipedia, went black with a protest. They went black for 24 hours. But something else happened. The most trafficked site in the world, Google, went and put a big black banner over their logo and had a link at the bottom of the page to express your opposition to the bills, which in the mind of many went too far. In other words, the concept of protecting proprietary rights is good, and we want to do that, but the way they were trying to do it in those bills would have been damaging to the Internet and our access to information, and so there was opposition. In the space of 24 hours, 7 million people signed that petition. Now, obviously, this reflects the massive traffic to Google. I understand that. The point is that 7 million people did take the time to sign that petition. Within 24 hours, the sponsors and chief backers of the bill withdrew their support, pulled the bill, and they will both be revised, and they'll come back at this issue again. That's in 24 hours.
That's pretty amazing.
That's just a taste of what people can do. Now, I'm not going to diminish in any way the importance of the need to address online piracy or the need to maintain integrity and access to the Internet. Believe me, I think they're important. I would contend, though, that the presence of extraterrestrials engaging the human race in the modern era, a presence that may go back thousands of years, as far as we can go back in recorded history, is even more important than that.
Yes.
And there is a petition on the White House website right now where people, if they act collectively, can possibly make history and bring this issue to a head and learn, finally, after 6.5 decades, whether or not they are alone in the universe, though I can tell you quite easily that we aren't alone in the universe. The evidence is overwhelming, and the only reason that that's not openly acknowledged is the government has deliberately withheld that knowledge, exactly as the Catholic Church withheld the acknowledgement of the new cosmology of a sun-centered solar system where the Earth was not the center of the universe. They actually withheld that for 100-plus years and killed a lot of people to keep that truth from coming out. And recently they apologized for what was a major blunder by the Catholic Church. So there you have it. I hope your listeners will sign this petition. I hope they will spread the link to this petition, and I hope they will send a brief note to the White House for their feedback, that we the people, asking that this petition be given a proper response. I'd like to check back with you maybe later in March on an update, and we can get into it, and we'll see what happens. But
absolutely,
it's a wonderful opportunity. I'm excited about it, and there's many other things coming down the pike here, conferences and new books coming out and so forth, as the issue continues to ripen and ripen and ripen. And all that remains is, when is the U.S. government going to finally end the embargo? And lastly, to anybody in government that may be paying attention here, you really have two options now. Either the U.S. government is going to acknowledge the ET presence, or another nation is going to do so. And so you have to decide how you want that to go.
Exactly. Well, Stephen, I really appreciate your dedication to the disclosure movement, and I know there's a lot of folks that do. So thank you so much for all the hard work you do, because I know it isn't easy.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate what you're doing and all of the shows that are being created on the internet. Freedom of speech is still alive and growing.
Absolutely.
Media is still growing. There's still a lot of consolidation, and there's still some issues, but still, never have we had the ability to get information out, I think, like this, thanks to the net. Yep. And let's see how whatever happens, 2012 is certainly going to be one of the most interesting years that we'll ever live through, and I'm excited about it. So let's check back later in the year.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on First Contact Radio, Stephen, and we'll talk very soon.
You're welcome.
All right, take care.